Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Medicower. I'm Rabina Mir, your host for this session, and today we're going to be looking at lots of health conditions that affect us during the winter months, particularly the things that we go to see the doctor about when we're really not feeling well, all those coughs and colds, things that make you think, oh, I need to see a doctor, and maybe you don't. So let's have a see if our doctor today can advise us on what we can do for ourselves, and let's see where we really do need to see a doctor. Obviously, our A&E services are very busy at this point, as are our GP surgeries. So we need to make the best use of our services and make sure that we use our doctors for the things that we really need them for. And hopefully by today, you'll have some tips on how to look after yourselves for all the things that you thought you needed a doctor for and actually you might not have done. So let's see who's in the hot seat today. I think we've got Dr. Liz with us today. Hello, Liz, and welcome.
Hello again.
Hello. Thank you very much for being here. What are we going to be talking about today under this umbrella of minor illnesses?
I thought it would be a good idea to talk about the sorts of things that a lot of people are struggling with at the moment, and it's to do with the season of the year really, because we have so many germs around.
We do.
And people are picking them up, and because we mostly live in a small, in tight sort of communities, kids at school, families, we're passing them on.
Well, there was a time when people used to be told to cover their mouths when they coughed and sneezed. And
we still should.
Yeah, and we still should, because I remember there was a campaign during the wars, wasn't there, for keep your coughs and sneezes to yourself. But we don't seem to see that habit nowadays as much as we should.
It's something we should do, because we'll talk about it really, about how we pass and spread germs.
Okay.
And so what you're saying is absolutely crucially important.
Okay.
So I thought really at the moment we've got a lot of, we could say, coughs, colds, sore throats.
Yes.
So should we start there?
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
Right.
Thank you.
And I've got a cough at the moment, so
You
if
have?
I suddenly start, you'll know what's going on.
And I'm sitting quite far away from you for a good reason today.
We've got different germs that can cause different infections. And I think it's worth, right at the beginning, talking about virus infections and bacteria infections. And everybody hears this word, oh, it's a virus going round. We don't often say it's a bacteria going round. Usually we talk about viruses. And it's really important to understand there's a very big difference between a virus infection and most bacterial infections, because whereas a lot of bacteria infections need to be treated with antibiotics,
I wondered if you were going to bring that up.
a virus infection will basically get better on its own.
Now, this is the controversy around this. Well, I don't know if it's controversy, but it's more a case of the thing that can upset people the most when they go to see the doctor. They're not feeling well. They're expecting to get antibiotics. And yet there's a massive campaign about controlling how much antibiotics people have.
No, you are absolutely right. And this is so important. In the olden days, and I have to say, the olden days was when I was starting to be a doctor, not that long ago. We were really very slack in the way we gave antibiotics, because we thought at that time that antibiotics were the right thing for all infections.
Yes.
And we've learnt since, and experience is showing us, and some really sad things, that we in the past have not used antibiotics properly. We've used them far more than we should have done.
So it's your fault, not ours.
Well, and what we've done is we've built up a resistance. So what's happened is the germs have got used to the antibiotics, so they no longer respond. They are no longer killed by the antibiotics. So the germs are getting stronger and stronger.
Now, what I need to check on this, because one of the questions I had from the community was about antibiotics as if it was one drug, but actually there are lots of antibiotics, aren't there? And they do different things, don't they?
If I said using the term antibiotic is a bit like using the term vegetable. So if we said vegetable, we've got peas, carrots, courgette, green beans, tomatoes, blah, 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 blah. There's lots.
Yes, there are.
And if I say antibiotic, I could be meaning penicillin, amoxicillin, erythromycin.
Right.
You can imagine there's lots and lots.
Sure.
And what we really do, if we use antibiotics, we use the special right antibiotic for that particular germ.
And how do you know which one to use?
Well, when we come to, at the moment, the coughs and colds, I'm actually wanting people to understand that 99.99 times out of 100, it's actually not a bacteria, it's a virus infection. And therefore, using antibiotics, will absolutely make no difference to how quickly they get better.
Okay.
But in fact, we're causing ourselves problems because we are leading to more and more resistance to antibiotics by using the wrong antibiotic at the wrong time.
Now, that makes me think that's a problem then when you really do need them, that they wouldn't work.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's why we need to be careful about having them. Okay.
So when somebody comes at the moment, and our surgeries are full of people who feel really poorly, they're not coming because of nothing better to do. No. They really do feel quite poorly. Yeah. They've got coughs and colds. So how do coughs and colds show themselves? Well, everybody knows this, don't they? You start feeling maybe your throat feels a bit dry, maybe a little bit sore. You start spluttering a little bit.
Stuff's coming out.
Stuff may come out, may not come out, but may come out. And then you can start to feel ill in yourself. You might feel temperature, usually not that high, but you can get a temperature. You feel off it. Now, off it's different for everybody, isn't it? Off it's very often, you haven't got the same energy, you don't maybe want to eat as much. And so what can we do at that stage to make the bugs go away?
Yeah, that's
well, the answer is the bugs are going to stay and we're going to get better because our own body's resistance will fight the germs, and it's likely to take probably at least a week. So there is no magic treatment to make somebody feel 100% better, sorted.
Now, I know sometimes you can feel unwell like this with all these symptoms, but it takes longer than a week.
Yeah.
Is that the time you need to see a doctor?
Well, I think it's a reasonable thing to say. If after a week you are not feeling better, and I think, Robina, it's very difficult to be black and white when we're talking about these subjects. And also, everybody's different. Yes. So if we're talking about a tiny baby who is obviously more vulnerable to infections, or if we're talking about a 25-year-old rugby player, tough man, or then if we're talking about...
Tough men, they're all got man flu,
they're all a bit, exactly, they're all a bit wimpy. But what I'm saying is they're very fit and able to fight off the germs.
Okay, so it's
and then we might have a frail little old lady of 76. So I think advice has to be understood that I can't speak specifically for every single person. And so what I'm talking about is generally. So I would say if most of us, if you and I aren't feeling better after a week or so, and we think we're actually getting worse, then I think it's quite reasonable to go and see somebody who's an expert to give us some advice. The thing I've got to say as well is that's not always doctors. A lot of surgeries now will have very, very well-trained nurses who can be just as helpful and just as good as doctors. So please don't think it's only doctors that are the experts here.
I mean, even getting an appointment with a doctor's taking time today.
Yeah, but let's think about why is that? Is that sometimes because the doctors are having to spend so much time seeing people with problems which possibly could have been sorted out themselves or didn't need the person to be rushing to the doctor. So instead of going to the doctor when you start with your cough and your cold, first of all, appreciating it is going to take a while. We're not going to feel better overnight, but there's an awful lot we can do for ourselves.
Well, that's what I was hoping we could talk about, because what can we do at home?
Right, well, let's start with, first of all, something as simple as drinking plenty of fluids.
So we're not talking about fizzy drinks, we're talking about...
No, we're talking about drinking. We're talking about don't become dehydrated.
Right.
And generally speaking, fizzy drinks aren't the ones I would personally rush to. But if you've got a child and the only thing they really will drink is fizzy drinks, and can I say, I hope they're sugar-free fizzy drinks. But generally it's often just water, or you and I probably, we might drink a bit more tea, that sort of thing. Ginger tea, any sort of tea at all. Just keep ourselves well hydrated. Eating, well, if we're not feeling like it, we don't have to feel we have to eat something.
No.
We can have drinks, we can have pieces of fruit, we can have a milky drink. A milky drink will have us plenty of calories. We're not going to fade away overnight. Well, you and I are not going to fade away overnight. So we've got to be drinking, but we don't need to be necessarily eating lots.
Yeah, because you do lose your appetite during these episodes, don't you? And I think for me, when I've been unwell like that, I've often thought I don't have an appetite for dinner, but I certainly do know that I need to drink. I need to perhaps try some fruit or some salady things rather.
Or it might just be a slice of toast.
Yes,
you might just want a little bit of something.
Yeah, just to keep you
know.
going.
So just something to keep you ticking over.
Light things.
And it's the same for us as mums thinking about our kids. We all have this instinct. Oh, we've got to make sure our kids are eating plenty.
Yeah.
Well, it might just be they have a boiled egg and half a slice of toast.
Yeah.
You don't need to eat lots.
No.
Just make sure there's something going in.
So where does rest play a part in all of this?
Well, first of all, if you're feeling weary, and I know how I felt with my cold, I just haven't got the energy. And I think our body tells us what we need to do. And that might be that we go to bed early. It might be we have a snooze in the middle of the afternoon. I think we can listen to our own bodies.
Yeah.
I think we can actually do a lot, apart from the drinking, things like paracetamols, ibuprofen. Very easily to buy from the supermarket.
Now, what's the difference between those two?
They are quite different drugs.
What do they do that's different then?
Basically, what they're both doing for us is they are bringing our temperatures down. Paracetamol particularly, well, no, I shouldn't just say particularly, both those drugs will bring our temperatures down.
Okay.
And particularly with children, if you have a child with a temperature, just having a temperature can wipe that child out.
Yeah.
And again, I'm going to emphasise, a child with a temperature, we must make sure they're drinking plenty.
Okay.
So if you have a temperature, bring your temperature down, buy paracetamol and or ibuprofen.
Okay.
And then the other things, particularly kids really, if kids have high temperatures, why are we making sure they've got a jumper on and the blanket's on? Take the blanket off, take the jumper off. Maybe all they need is just their little nightie or something. If you're hot, the last thing you need to do is to wrap them up in loads of blankets.
So why is sometimes your head's so hot but your body's shivering and cold?
Well, the way our temperatures can be is temperatures can cause us to feel hot and cold, and it can go up and down.
Okay.
But if you have a temperature and you're feeling hot, the thing to do is to cool yourself down. And you can do that with the paracetamols, with the ibuprofen. Children, for instance, I know I've done this when my kids were really hot, a cool flannel, wipe the face down, wipe them down, and that can be really cooling and very soothing. It does feel soothing. With drinking, have cold drinks. Right. Things like putting ice cubes in your glass of water. I know it sounds a bit trivial. Sucking a nice lolly.
I was just going to say,
really good for kids.
Probably the time you can give them a nice lolly, isn't it?
They might not want to eat anything, but they might manage a spoonful of ice cream.
Yes.
So it's cooling. Yeah. That's not really a fluid as in drinking,
no.
But if they won't eat anything else, and a bit of ice cream's nice.
But a nice pop and a nice lolly
absolutely.
gets more water into them than milk,
Perfect.
doesn't it?
Or just an ice cube. Sucking an ice cube's really good if you've got a sore throat.
What else would you recommend for sore throats?
Well, you can, instead of taking the paracetamol as a tablet and swallowing it, you can get dissolvable paracetamols.
Okay.
So you can dissolve the paracetamol in some water and gargle.
All right. Okay.
So gargling can be quite soothing.
Okay.
Sucking an ice cube can be soothing for a sore throat.
I know in our communities a lot of time we use honey.
Yeah, well, honey and glycerine can make a very good cough mixture.
Right, okay.
So, yes, we can go to the chemist, we can buy cough mixtures, but actually, there's very little evidence that cough mixtures make you get better any quicker.
Right.
In fact, they probably don't make you get better any quicker. Coughs are awful. That I know I was coughing all last night, so it's very disruptive to your sleep.
Yes, it is.
And if some people find a cough mixture means they don't cough as much and therefore they sleep better, then fine.
When does a cough become a time for concern? I mean, I'm thinking about if it's not just stopping you from sleeping, but it's also you're having to be propped up to breathe properly. Or
I think the sort of coughs which do and should be seen by a doctor, if you start coughing up blood, that's always a time anybody should go. If you feel unwell or you don't feel unwell, anybody coughing up blood should go and see a doctor.
That's a serious symptom.
That's a serious symptom. If you've had your cough, you're feeling unwell, your temperature's high, you're feeling really poorly, and you're starting to cough up horrible yellow, green, thick phlegm, and you're feeling poorly with it, that may be the sort of infection that isn't the virus infection, is the bacteria infection, which will benefit from some antibiotics. So that would be one that would be worth. Now, I've got a cough at the moment, and there might be stuff coming up, but it's not yellow and horrid and green. It's just a bit thick and horrible. I'm sure nobody wants to hear about my cough.
Quite.
No. But what I'm saying is, you can cough up stuff without the need to rush off to the doctor.
Okay.
It goes along with the change in colour, the feeling really poorly, having a really high temperature. You were asking a bit more. Can I interrupt you?
Yeah,
Sorry.
please do.
Asking about sore throats. If you've got a sore throat, most of us want to see what's going on. So we go to the mirror and we open our mouths as wide as we can and we shine lights, and as a mum you start looking in. And what we'll usually see is that the throat can look really quite red and sore.
Yes.
So that's a sign that there's a sore throat going on.
Yeah.
The sort of sore throat that would warrant going to see the doctor is when you look, and if the throat isn't just red but also is yellow and yucky.
Oh, right, okay.
You can almost see bits of pus there.
Okay.
And the other thing is, if you feel under here, you can feel that your glands have become swollen.
Okay.
And so sometimes be really quite painful. And that's the sort of a sore throat. And that sore throat really makes you feel poorly.
Okay.
Really high temperature, really feeling awful. That may well be the bacteria sore throat that needs the antibiotics. So if you've got a sore throat, it's bound to feel a bit red, bound to look a bit red, but not necessarily the sort that's going to need any antibiotics.
So we've covered the bit about the antibiotics, and that's to do with bacteria. What about, what do we mean when you're talking about viruses, and why don't they need antibiotics?
They're a different sort of germ altogether.
Okay.
And they just will not be affected by viruses, by antibiotics, because our own body's resistance can kill them.
Okay.
So every single day we are being besieged by all sorts of germs and things which are in the air. Our bodies, we eat all sorts of things and there's little tiny bugs in them.
Sure.
Our bodies actually, in our bowels, we have some good bacteria, and so our bodies are used to coping.
Right.
And a lot of them that are not really healthy for us, our own resistance will fight against.
Right.
So,
but that takes time, you said.
Yeah. So that's why the virusy bugs aren't going to just get better overnight. We need something to keep us feeling okay whilst we give our bodies chance to fight the germs off. That's where I come to the little tiny baby or the elderly person or somebody who's poorly from another reason, somebody who's perhaps been quite poorly with other conditions. Their resistance will not be as strong as you or I. So those are the ones we have to be a little bit more careful with, and may need to go and have an expert give us some help sooner than you or I, who can try and fight it off.
I wonder if I can just sidetrack a little bit, just because of the thing about, we're talking about fighting resistance and the ability to do that. What boosts our immune system so that we can do that?
Healthy lives. Talking about lifestyle, eating a good diet, having the right amount of vitamins and minerals, which very often means considering the fruit and veg that we eat.
They say eat a rainbow of colours every day, don't
well, they used to say 5 a day.
Yeah.
I mean, now we say 5 at least a day.
Yes.
And veg and fruit does come in all colours, so it's very easy to say. But, you know, you can have something, you can have 5 green things if you have, well, we won't go into exactly what, but plenty of fruit and veg with lots and lots of vitamins and minerals that will keep us healthy.
And I think sorry, I was just going to say, because some of the things that we underestimate as being in our diet can often be to do with the fact that we've cut onions and put them into a curry, and that might make a portion of vegetables. And I think we underestimate that actually we have that, or we put tomatoes in our curries as well, or in our sauces. So I think it's important for our listeners to understand that they still contribute to that 5 a day, don't they?
I'm afraid my experience, though, is of how little fruit and veg people eat.
Yes.
It never ceases to amaze me. And talking about minor problems, constipation. I know, not a very glamorous thing to talk about.
But a common occurrence.
But we need to be eating fruit and veg to provide fibre and bulk so that our bodies can work properly.
I'm surprised at how many people I meet who tell me they have problems like that, but actually when I ask them, do you drink water, they very rarely drink water.
Very important. We have to have fibre in our diet, but we need plenty of fluid as well to keep the sort of contents of our bowels well, what's the word I'm looking for?
Moving?
Moving, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Moving.
But it's just amazing to me how little fruit and veg people eat, particularly children.
Yeah.
We all know, again, how tricky it can be to get kids particularly to eat the fruit and veg. And I think as parents, we often do have to be quite sneaky and quite keen.
You do. I know when I've made things like lasagnas and shepherd's pies and things that are to do with dishes that they want to eat, I'll often sort of use courgettes or something that I've sort of blended into the sauce, so they don't know they're there, and they can't taste them. But I know I've added the extra veg in there just to make sure that they're getting a bit more than they used to.
So the food you eat is very important. Fresh food, important too. Emphasis on the fruit and veg. Milk, good for us as well. It's interesting that breakfast cereal actually has quite a lot of vitamins and minerals added. So
and iron nowadays as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the trouble is most children, it's, you know, they get up late and they rush out of the house, and then instead of having what might have been a good breakfast, like a bowl of cereal or some toast or something, you see them walking out of the local shop with a can of Coke in one hand and a chocolate bar in the other. Not what we'd call a healthy breakfast.
No, and unfortunately some of the breakfasts are very high in sugar contents, which I know we can't cover that today, but it's one of the things I think we do need to talk about in the future, don't we?
Keeping active, physical, so thinking about sport. You don't have to join a gym, go for a walk. So all those things will help us to our resistance to be on top of things.
Okay. Shall we move on to earache?
Common thing, not so much for adults, more in children. Children are far more prone to getting earache, and they can be really very miserable with it. And it's very much, again, part of this virusy package that comes with the sore throats, the coughs and the colds. In fact, there is a little tube that goes from the back of your throat into your ear. So if you're getting bugs and infection in your throat, it's not uncommon at all to get the moving up into the ear. So children can be really quite poorly and very miserable, sometimes with a temperature. I mean, I know I've had my kids crying during the night because they're in so much pain. So very important again to think about the paracetamols, the ibuprofens, the plenty of fluids. Again, can take several days to get better. If the child is really poorly, really high temperature, really struggling, then it is worth having the ear checked by the doctor, and the doctor has a special instrument that can look down the ear. And sometimes, but only sometimes, antibiotics will be the best treatment. Very, very often it's a virus infection, no antibiotics needed, just soothing medicines to tide the person over until it's getting better.
But if it's painful, it sounds like they need to see a doctor.
Well, no, earache is called ache because it's painful.
So at what level then does the mum decide to come and see you? I think,
again, it's everybody's different. What I would say is if your child is really poorly, and at a high temperature is a very good indicator, and if they're not responding to the paracetamol or the ibuprofen, so always worth trying that straight away. And paracetamol and ibuprofen can be topped up every 6 to 8 hours. So don't just think one spoonful is going to be enough. We're going to need to carry on with it. And then each mum has to make their own call. But very often mums come to the surgery with a child who's had earache, and the child can be playing happily and running around the surgery, and I said, oh yeah, it hurts a bit, but is that a really poorly child? Now, every mum has to make their own call, but I think very much about how is this child coping overall.
Those are really helpful tips, actually. I think it's so natural for mums to be overly worried because of the fact that they've got a child that's not being themselves, and nobody likes to take chances with children, do they? So I think...
I'll tell you what as well, I've got 3 children, and I don't know about you, your response with your first child is very different to by the time it's child number 3 and you've been there, done it, and got the T-shirt.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's amazing. And sometimes a granny can be really helpful.
Well,
a granny
I know
who's
about
been
that.
through it, exactly. A granny who's been through it and seen it all
Yeah.
can be quite helpful too.
Let's hope so.
So
Okay.
ear ache tends to be more children than grown-ups as well.
Okay, I think that brings us to the break time actually, so we're going to come
Right.
back after the break hopefully, and I look forward to you joining us then, and we'll see you in a short while. Thank you.